Good morning. Thank you very much for the kind introduction, Dr. Asoka. My topic here today is to talk about human factors and non-technical skills, lessons learned from aviation industry. I just got a call from Dr. Mitraji that the sir asking whether these registrars have asked him whether it is on the aviation industry. So they are not, they don't want to come to the lecture actually. Anyway, it's about human factors and non-technical skills. It's always better to learn from someone else, right? So we can improve ourselves. I'm not sure whether you have heard about this before, but some of you may have heard about this. Some of you may have quite good knowledge on this and maybe actually practicing these skills in your day-to-day practice to improve your outcome. So we'll see what are those first, and then we will see few videos in aviation industry. So what are the human factors? Just an introduction. So my aim here is to introduce these things to you, and then you should identify these factors as an individual in your day-to-day practice and try to improve yourself further. So we as an individual are not actually independent. We are influenced by various factors. So our behavior in our working environment is also influenced by various factors. So these are the factors which can affect our performance, which may be affect in a way that it will cause problems, are called human factors. So we can actually divide them into various categories like environmental, organizational, job factors, and especially the human and individual characteristics. Right? So those are called human factors. So I will go into detail. So I'm not going to go into details at this stage. For example, I will see in an environment where there is an emergency situation happens in our field. Environmental factors may be the lightings, the space, or the temperature. Right? These all can affect our behavior. And in addition to that, the organizational factors, so many things about your blood bank facilities, how long will it take to get the blood, what are the facilities available in your hospitals, those things. The job factors, your shifts, and whether you are exhausted or not, right? And the number of staff available for the particular job. And the human and individual characteristics, I would like to go into details when we discuss the non-technical skills. So non-technical skills are actually specific human competencies. We have specific human competencies. For example, like critical decision making, team communication, the situational awareness, and workload management, teamwork, and everything. So these are the skills that we should develop in ourselves to actually improve the patient care. So when you don't have these skills, it can affect our behavior and the outcome of the patient. So it can cause actually human errors. So my aim is to give you some idea about these two factors and try to make you aware about it, and then you can probably practice it later. I will probably not go into details of organizational and job factors because we cannot change individually those things, so it has to have some policy making issues. So I will probably go through mainly the non-technical skills aspects of the aspect. The human error is commonly defined as a failure of a planned action to achieve a desired outcome. So it's basically if something go wrong, right? So we plan it for something, but it just go wrong. So that is a human error because something has happened. It has not gone according to our plan. But problem is this human error has been cited as the primary cause or contributing factor in disasters and accidents in industries like nuclear power, aviation, space exploration. We have not actually understood that whether it has affected the medicine until recently. So that is the problem. Right. So you have some idea about these human factors and non-technical skills. I would like to go into a small video, and this will be like a 5-minute video. You just carefully watch. I'm not sure whether you'll understand everything, but it's the video on the world's worst aircraft
At
accident.
2:24 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on March 27, 1977, Pan American Flight 1736, a Boeing 747, took off from John F. Kennedy Airport in New York City, bound for Las Palmas in the Canary Islands. 1 hour and 18 minutes later, KLM Flight 4805, another Boeing 747, took off from Schiphol Airport in Amsterdam, also headed to Las Palmas. While the two aircraft were en route to Las Palmas, a terrorist bomb exploded in the passenger terminal at the airport. As a result, all aircraft destined for Las Palmas were diverted to Los Rodeos Airport on the island of Tenerife. Due to congestion at Los Rodeos, both 747 aircraft were told to park in the holding area for runway 12, with the KLM aircraft closest to the runway. Several hours later, after the Las Palmas airport had been reopened, the Pan American crew prepared to proceed to Las Palmas. However, when they attempted to taxi to the runway, their path was blocked by the KLM airplane. At 4:58 p.m., the KLM airplane asked for and received permission to enter the runway and begin taxiing to the holding position for runway 30. The initial clearance to the KLM airplane was to exit the runway at the third taxiway. This was later amended for the airplane to backtrack, that is to taxi down the length of the runway and execute a 180-degree turn. At 5:02, the Pan Am airplane was contacted by the tower and told to travel down the runway and then exit it using the third transverse taxiway, taxiway C3. This would clear the way for the KLM airplane to take off. The first two taxiways, C1 and C2, were unusable due to the numerous aircraft diverted from Las Palmas that had been parked on the taxiway parallel to the runway. As the Pan Am aircraft began its taxi on the runway, there was some confusion as to which taxiway they were to use to exit the runway. The tower confirmed that they were to use the third taxiway, C3. At 5:03, the KLM airplane told the tower that they had just passed taxiway C4. The tower replied that the KLM airplane should execute the 180-degree turn and report when ready for ATC clearance. There was intermittent fog during the taxi of the two airplanes. Runway visibility was measured from a device 70 meters south of the approach end of runway 30. Runway visibility was measured at 2,000 to 3,000 meters at 4:50, 300 meters at 5:02, and 1,000 meters at 5:10. The variable visibility was due to fog that was being carried along the length of the runway. The visibility deteriorated to the point that aircraft taxiing on the main runway, as well as some located in the parking area, were not visible from the tower. At 5:04 and 26 seconds, the Pan Am captain stated that they had passed the C1 taxiway. At 5:05, the tower informed the KLM and Pan Am airplanes that the runway centerline lighting was out of service. In response to the tower communication, the Pan Am captain informed the crew that with the centerline lights out, they would need 800 meters of visibility in order to take off. The captain also noted that they were passing taxiway C2. At 5:05 and 53 seconds, the tower provided the KLM airplane with its ATC clearance. At 5:06 and 9 seconds, the KLM airplane read back the clearance and announced that we're now at takeoff. At 5:06 and 11 seconds, the brakes on the KLM 747 were released, followed 3 seconds later by throttle movement in order to set takeoff power. At this time, the KLM airplane was rolling down the runway. At 5:06 and 18 seconds, the tower controller replies, "Okay," followed 2 seconds later with "Stand by for takeoff, I will call you." Concurrent with the controller's request to stand by for takeoff, the Pan Am airplane announced on the radio that they were still taxiing down the runway. The simultaneous transmissions caused a shrill noise in the KLM cockpit, making the transmissions difficult to hear. At 5:06 and 25 seconds, the controller asked the Pan Am airplane to report when they were clear of the runway. Pan Am responded that they would report when clear. This transmission was heard in the KLM cockpit, prompting the KLM flight engineer to ask the KLM captain, "Is he not clear then?" The captain didn't hear the question and responded with, "What do you say?" And the flight engineer again asked, "Is he not clear, that Pan American?" The KLM captain responded to the second question with an emphatic, "Oh, yes." At approximately 5:06 and 38 seconds, the Pan Am flight crew saw the KLM airplane coming at them out of the fog. The Pan Am crew attempted to avoid the collision by accelerating and turning left towards the grass. 9 seconds later, the two airplanes collided on the runway just short of the C4 taxiway. Of the 248 passengers and crew aboard the KLM flight, there were no survivors. 335 of the 396 aboard the Pan Am flight were killed, making this the deadliest accident in the history of aviation.
Right. What do you think? Whose fault is this? I know that you have not understood everything, but what is the problem with that?
No, the story, the little part, the KLM pilot was an instructor actually.
Right.
So actually he was annoyed that he had to wait for such time. So that is
Yeah.
why, so actually too much confidence, which was not shown there, but that is
Very
what
prestigious.
prestige. Yeah. So
That's
he was a super pilot. So that is one main reason what happened there actually. I didn't know you are going to win this, but that is what happened is that.
Yeah, so can we blame him actually? Is he the only culprit in this situation?
No.
No, right? So this is the statistics. So finally when they have actually evaluated, usually they do that at the inquiry, there were so many problems they have identified related to this incident actually. So if you actually take all the human factors and non-technical skills involved in this, I can actually list it down like this. So there were so many environmental issues, poor visibility, you saw that the fog was coming, and then the center lights were not functioning at the end. The organizational issues were very important. There was unexpected diversion to a very small airport, so it was crowded. The air traffic officers are forced to control the difficult traffic. There were certain job factors. You know that the pilots have the allowable flying hours, so they can't just fly more than that. Recently also one of the Sri Lankan flight had landed somewhere and they had to stay for overnight before they start flight again. So anxiety due to delay, so allowable time limit of their duty time. And the non-technical skills, there were serious mistakes in communication. So if you actually go through this video again, it is in the YouTube, you can identify what were the problems in communication. And the complete loss of situational awareness. The pilot didn't have that much of situational awareness. And the high self-esteem of the captain, and he didn't actually listen to the second junior flight engineer. And the junior flight engineer didn't have the assertiveness to proceed further, right? He didn't disturb him further. So finally the wrong decision making. So all have involved in the world worst aviation disaster.
And I don't think the main runway should be used to taxi unless you are landed on there.
Right.
So that is probably another organizational issue.
Yes, okay. So, the human error has been documented as the primary contributor to more than 70% of major commercial airline accidents. And United Airlines was the first airline to provide the crew resource management course training for its cockpit in 1981. By the 1990s, it has become a global standard for airline training. So in airline training, this is a separate module for them. Have you heard about the Martin Bromley? You must have already seen videos. And in 2006 or something, I think 1 or 2 years ago, before this, the Martin Bromley's wife, and she was very young at that stage, and came for an routine ENT operation. This has happened in UK, and she had difficult intubation. There were two senior consultant anesthetists, 2 senior nurses, 2 ODPs, all were there, and they were trying to intubate this lady, and it was very difficult, took some time, just been desaturating, didn't recognize much, wanted to intubate with so many other techniques, and finally she was hypoxic and ended up in ICU care. After about a few months, I think she died. So fortunately or unfortunately, her husband, the Martin Bromley, was a pilot. So he wanted to analyze this situation. Despite of going for compensation, he actually wanted to, with good heart, to evaluate this and find out what does actually happen. And he realized that there were lots of problems in non-technical skills involved in this situation. So he himself started the first clinical human factors group in UK in 2007, which has both human factor experts and the clinical experts. And now they are doing various educational programs and so many things to make the healthcare people aware about these human factors and non-technical skills to improve the outcome of the patients.
2 videos are available.
Yes, if you actually go to the internet, if you type human factors, and it will come under just a routine operation. If you don't press the Martin Bromley is also, there are so many videos, just a routine operations, you can go through that, it was nicely narrated, right?
The second video is over there after correcting those factors.
Yeah, is that so?
Yeah.
So during the last 10 years, the importance of non-technical skills for delivering safe and high-quality medical care has been increasingly recognized. More recently, the research has begun to identify the specific non-technical skills important for safety in medical domains such as anesthesia and surgery. So this was 2 examples. This is for anesthetists. So this is how to rate the anesthetist non-technical skills. It's called ANS. And this is for surgeons. It's called NOTS. They have identified the most important non-technical aspects of each and every specialty. So finally, up to 80% of adverse events in hospitals are related to lack of non-technical skills. So technical skills are also important, right? But the non-technical skills are the ones which are more important if you want to improve the outcome of your patients. So that's why I'm going to deliver this lecture today. So what are the non-technical skills that I'm going to talk about? Are these? Probably the last 2 may not be able to discuss because of the time constraints. So we will start with situational awareness. So what is situational awareness? So this picture, is it clear? I'm sorry that there's some problem with focusing with this projector. So if you look at this picture, they have completely lost the situational awareness. I'm not sure what are they doing actually. They must be watching the last minute of a football match or something. I'm not sure. But so this is complete loss of situational awareness. There are some pictures. Yeah. So it's not simple as that actually. So if you actually analyze what is situational awareness, it comes under 3 headings. One is, you need to gather information. If you go to an emergency situation or a place where the cardiac arrest happens, you need to gather information, the maximum information possible within the given period of time, right? Not only gathering information, you need to understand them and you need to interpret those information in relation to the clinical scenario. And then you have to thinking ahead, you have to have some plan or anticipate in the future states and to have a plan. So if you take all these 3, it's called situational awareness, right? So we'll go one by one. So what is gathering information? Gathering information is actually what is happening around. But when you go to the emergency situations, there are information which are important for you or which are not important for you. So you have to be very intelligent to differentiate between the more important information to be gathered, because otherwise you will be misguided by the unnecessary information also. That also you should need to keep it in mind. So what are the information that you want to gather? So basically you all know we should have a clear idea about what is happening in the patient, so general information, so history, examination, investigation. If you are in an emergency situation, you can go with some kind of structured approach to assess the patient within a very short period of time. And the environment, whether the place, lighting, the noise, temperature, space, are they adequate or appropriate? The organizational issues, the policies, shifts, working hours. Now if you are working in an ICU around 6:30 to 7, so the nurses' shifts are usually, the time where the nurses' support is minimum. So that information also you should have in your mind when you want to manage the patient. So team, very important. What are your team members? Who are they? What are their skills, right? Experience. And the tasks. What are you doing or supposed to do? Or the procedures. What are the treatment that has already been done? How many blood pints has been given? How many blood pints are available? How long will it take to get into the theatre? Right? So who are the consultants available at this stage? Right? Where is your consultant? So many things. And the time. How much of time has elapsed? And how much of time that we have? So all the informations are called gathering information. So you need to take the maximum possible information. So otherwise, the interpretation and the understanding is difficult. So I will just play another small video. This is an awareness test. You all should participate in this test, right? Right, in this, there are 2 teams are passing balls with each other. What you have to count is the white group or the white team, how many passes they make, right? White team, okay? So two teams, white and black.
This is an awareness test. How many passes does the team in white make?
How many passes? 30. Okay. Any other cases? No, 30, right, okay.
The answer is 13.
Very good.
But did you see the moonwalking bear?
Right, so did you see anything? Extra? Right, okay. So it's very easy to miss something if you don't specifically look at it. So that's the the message that you get. Yeah? So what is understanding and interpretation? It's not very simple, but like you need to get all the information and try to understand it in relation to its clinical situations. That's what I mentioned here. So if you see a screen like this, your heart rate is high and the saturation is low, blood pressure is low, respiratory rate is 37, right? So I know that you all are very experienced anesthetists, so that you know what to do in this situation, what kind of clinical conditions can hold this. But if you are going to manage each and everything separately, right? So it may not be the appropriate treatment for this patient. So this may be due to one single cause, right? So this may be just the sepsis. So like getting information from various sources and interpreting together is very important. So you need a little bit of knowledge and skills as well there. So that is called understanding and interpretation. And then you need to anticipate your future states. Is there a possibility of going this patient into cardiac arrest within next half an hour or so, or within next few minutes? So then you need to act fast. So without predicting the future. So what are the things that we need to do in the next few hours? So if this patient is sepsis, within 1 hour we have to do certain things. So those are the future, anticipating future states. So what will happen? Then it's very easy to prepare for the event. Very easy. So this is called situational awareness. Right. Then we will go to the decision making. It also has got 4 components. One is identify and analyzing the problem. So you need to, before you make a decision, you need to analyze the problem carefully. And you need to identify the options. What are the options I have? And you need to balance the risks and benefits and selecting an option. Because this will change with the situation. So if the book says, this should not be done, so this is the cautions or contraindication for a particular situation. It may not be so in another situation, because if you take the risks and benefits, right, it's like in an emergency, the airway emergency, so he may not be fasting, so you are going to take the risks of regurgitation and aspiration over losing airway or something like that. So you need to balance the risks and benefits at that particular situation, right? And reassessing and reviewing outcomes is also part of the decision making, so we'll go through one by one slowly. So identify and analyzing the problem, say example hypotension and tachycardia in a trauma patients, hypovolemia until proven otherwise, right? So, but it may also be due to cardiac tamponade, cardiac contusion, cardiac tension, pneumothorax or spinal damage. So keep those things also in your mind, and this is how you identify. It may be hypovolemia, so okay, you identify the problem. And then, what is your option? What are the treatment options? Whether you are going to treat with crystalloids or colloids or blood, whether it is surgery or conservative. So all the options should come to your mind. And say for example in a patient's acute renal failure, so whether you go for hemodialysis, CVVH or peritoneal dialysis, or are we going to manage this patient conservatively? So this is just example. So you need to identify the options, all the options available, and try to identify the best option possible. So how to identify the best option? It's a little difficult. You need a bit of knowledge and experience also, and you have a few options, and you need to identify the best option. For that, you need to identify the risks and benefits you have to weigh. And intervention also usually time critical. Most of the intervention in critical care and during our field. So therefore, time critical intervention should be done very quickly, and you need to act fast. So you need to reassess patients to see whether your decisions are correct. This is another very important non-technical skills that we all should develop. We all have lots of problems with proper communication. So I would like to discuss this along these 3 headings. One thing is giving information clearly and concisely, including context and intent. Then second, receiving information, and try to identify the barriers for communication and then rectify those. Now in an environment like this, you can really understand how important the proper communication is, because there are so many people around, and if you don't give the proper commands or communication, there will be lots of things can happen. So we need to develop these 4 communication skills, right? So thinking is also part of the communication skill. The listening, speaking, and the non-verbal communication. So thinking before talking is also very important, because then you will extract what are the most important information that you need to be delivered. So having a clear idea of the information you are transmitting will help you in presenting a well-structured and trustworthy message. Then listening is also very important. You need to say, for example, especially if you are getting information over the phone. So you need to support the conversation. Show that you are engaged and willing to learn more. Give full attention to what the person is saying. Ask small questions. Acknowledge that you are processing the information. By listening to others, you have a better chance in verifying if the information you are providing was successfully received. So listening is very important. Like when someone is speaking clearly, it's always better not to disturb him, but you just tell him that, acknowledge that you are actually listening to that. And if at the end of the speech, then you can actually ask whether there's any questions you have. So kind of disturbing in the middle of the conversation would probably give some information that the other person has intended to deliver. And speaking should be, we all should know, it should be very clear. You have to have a good project voice, and it has to be kind of it should be delivered slowly, and it should be clear, and should be to the point. Non-verbal communications are actually is important again, especially in emergency situations where you use your facial expressions or hand movements to give some information. So that is also an accepted method of communication during, especially in an emergency. So this is very important. This is I actually stolen from Dr. Mitraji's presentation. Meant is not said. You have actually thought about it, but it doesn't mean that you have already told it. Said is not heard. Even if you tell something, doesn't mean that the other person has listened to it. Heard is not understood. So you hear something, but it doesn't mean that you have understood. And the understood is not done. So this is very important. So we sometimes say, I told you that you can't say, because it is your responsibility to get it done. So it has to go through a long way. Right? So all messages should be delivered in a calm and direct manner without yelling or shouting. Speak directly to a specific patient. You always try to use the name, specific names. Everyone has specific names, so then the message is very clear, delivered to a particular person. If the message isn't clear, you need to ask for clarification. Say it again, or can you repeat it? Or do you want me to do this? You can clarify like that. The team leader listens for confirmation of task performance from team member before assigning another task. So if you have done something, you can actually communicate back and say that I have done it so. So then you can actually close the communication loop. It's like that I'm sending you an SMS regarding this presentation. So then you have to send me noted thanks. Then I know that it has at least been received by you. And you will probably attend the class. Or otherwise you will say, I'm sorry, I will not be able to attend the class. Right? So that is the closed loop communication. And in places you manage patients, there shouldn't be any private conversations. So if you have any concern, or you need to raise it to the whole team, right? So I think by now you all must have heard about this method of communication, ISBAR. Have you heard about this? Right. ISBAR is the identifying the situation, background, assessment, and recommendation. So if you have this structure when you communicate with someone else, especially in an emergency, then there's a lesser chance of missing information. So identify who you are and whom you are speaking to. Situation is just a brief introduction about the situation that you have. I will give you some examples. And then the background, so you can tell whatever the medical history or what happened up to now. And the assessment, this is your assessment of the patient. And finally, your recommendation. So this is how you communicate, especially in an emergency. So I'll give you some examples. This is example 1. The introduction, the I is this Dr. Gunaratne, consultant physician? Okay, yes, speaking. So I am Dr. Saman, medical registrar, calling from Ward 12. May I discuss about one of the patient in our unit? Okay, yes, go on. Situation. So I am calling about Mr. Somadasa, casualty admission who is looking septic. Okay, go. So you given some brief kind of overall idea about the situation. And then his 50-year-old type 2 diabetic patients on oral hypoglycemic drugs, no any other past medical history. So that is the background. Assessment, he is ill looking and dyspneic with bilateral crepitation, saturation is 95% with oxygen, his tachycardic and blood pressure is 80/40. His running temperature of 39, his ECG shows sinus tachycardy inversion in lateral leads. I think he is septic, maybe due to bronchopneumonia, but still I can't exclude any cardiac involvement. Your recommendation to your consultant is, would you be able to come and see the patient? Yes, I'll come in about a half hour. Just check the ICU for a bit. Thank you. So if you just go through this ISBAR, then the chances of missing information is less. Right? So another example, bit of a more urgent situation. Am I talking to an anesthetic registrar on call? Yes. I am Dr. Naduni, House Officer, Ward 5, Obstetric. Situation, I am calling about a patient with postpartum hemorrhage from labor room A. Background, 20-year-old primary mother with no comorbidities. Assessment, she had a forceps delivery just now for obstructed labor. She has continuous bleeding PV. She's pale, the pulse rate is 120, blood pressure is 90/60. We have 2 green cannulae and saline is running. 2 units of blood has been requested. Our sir wants to take her to the theatre B now, just now. Recommendations, the House Officer's recommendations, will you be coming to the theatre? Yes, I'll be there in a minute. Can you activate the massive transfusion protocol? So this is how you communicate. So it's always better if you have a structure and have a good, thinking before you start your talking. So if it is very urgent, a cardiac arrest, you can just say, I'm so and so, I'm in the middle of the cardiac arrest. Would you be able to come quickly? So that is also enough, right? So it's all depend on the time you have to communicate. So again, it is very important to identify the barriers also. There are so many barriers for the communication. There are organizational barriers like no necessary tunnels or non-functioning or not used, like you don't have a crash call facility or you have to use your cell phones, the phone is not available in the particular place. So there are so many organizational issues. And it could be transmission failures, signal failure, background noise might disturb this thing. Wearing protective masks will not allow the other person to lip read. Soft voice especially in females, unclear messages. There may be language barriers also, hierarchy, etc. Because you don't like to talk to your consultant and it will go through various places, then it will reach, by the time it reaches to consultant, the complete distortion of the information. Right? So it's always better to communicate directly with the person you need. Right? You don't have to kind of think about these things. And it could be reception failure also, the misinterpretations. You got the message, but you interpret it in a different way. Disregarding, you don't take it as serious. Too late. Sometimes the information is received, but it's too late now. Impaired hearing, argument, etc. All can cause the communication issues. So you need to identify the barriers. If you don't really understand what he says, you need to tackle the problem. If you don't hear it, the sound is not very clear, so you can say, no, I'm not clear, so can you take the phone from a landline or something? So you have to get the correct message somehow. Right. So that's about communication. So I would like to discuss a bit about the team working. This is also very important. Now there's enough evidence to say that when there is a properly identified team with a good team leader would improve the outcome of the patients. So therefore this is very important. So team working also I would like to discuss under a few headings. One is supporting others, solving conflicts, exchanging information and coordinating activities. So how are you going to support others? So we all as individuals, our mental capacity is always sometimes get overwhelmed when there is a difficult situation. So you need support. So you can give emotional support, like you're doing well, there's enough time, so don't worry. So usually we expect it from a senior person when a junior person is doing something. You can give a cognitive support, like have you thought whether the patient may be septic? Right? So, or you can give a practical support. Would you like me to take some blood cultures while we are getting a venous access? So the support is important in every individual. So if you see someone is struggling, if you don't have anything else to do, so you go and support, and that will improve the outcome of the patient. Solving conflicts is also very important because we are not all same. We all have different ideas, views, opinions, individual characteristics. So when you work in a team, you all will have, there's a possibility that the conflicts can arise. So ideally the team leader should involve if there's a conflict. Finally, the final aim is to give the best care to the patient. So if you have a conflict, you discuss and give the best care to the patient. There shouldn't be any personal interests. If you have the authority, you can deliver the directive. So say you are the team leader, you can tell them, no, I'm the team leader, so we would do like this. So there won't be any conflicts of that. Right, for example, you have some disagreement on what to do. I think we should proceed to the theatre for exploration. He's septic now. So if you don't have the authority, like if you are a house officer or a junior person and you don't like to, go into conflicts with the senior people, there's something called graded assertiveness. This is another stolen slide. Right? So you can actually do like that. For example, first you bring it to the attention. If you have a concern, your concern is, I think he is in severe respiratory distress, his breathing pattern is also not good. So you have a concern. But other people are not concerned about it, he is managing something else. If he doesn't care, they don't care, then you inquire and make a V statement. Shall we intubate the patient? Okay, still don't care. And then you clarify. You tell them again, I feel really uncomfortable. He will go into respiratory arrest. We should intubate now. If they still don't consider this, then you can demand your response, because it's your duty. Now in that first video, you saw he actually stopped after second level, right? He knew that the aircraft is actually on the way, but that such a prestigious pilot was there, so he didn't want to disturb it further. So you can demand, okay, stop, you must listen to me, otherwise I'll call the consultant anesthetist or some kind of something like that. So this is called graded assertiveness, right? So somehow your concern should be raised. So that is the point. So exchanging information is very important. I'm not going to go into detail. So if you know everyone in the team knows what is happening, and it's very easy for them to manage the patient, and there won't be that much of delays. Coordinating activities are also very important. So failure to coordinate, what I have seen is there are so many delays when there is no coordination. Right? When you have a septic patient, and sometimes it will take hours and hours to take into the ICU, even if the ICU bed is available. Sometimes it takes hours and hours to go to the theatre because there are so many problems in the coordination of situations. So that will affect the outcome definitely. So I think the best example for coordination is the Formula pitstop one. I will show you the video, and just about this. What did they do actually? There were 20 people there. That team had 20 people, or 20 or 21. How many minutes that it took take? Seconds. How many seconds? Right, we'll see. So 0 second, car stops, foot on the brakes. 1 second, unscrew the wheel nuts, all 4 wheel nuts. Raise the car on the jack, fuel hose connected. 2 seconds, wheels off, start to fix 4 new wheels. Clean the helmet and visor. 3 seconds, wheels on, tighten the wheel nuts. 4 seconds, dropped from jacks, refueling is going on still. 5.5 seconds, signals the driver to select the first gear. 6.5 seconds, fuel hose comes out, signals the driver to take off. 7 seconds, car leaves the pit stop. Right. So we don't want that much fast coordination, but so you can imagine how long will it take for us to manage a critical situation, emergency situation. So why can't we have that kind of coordination? Why can't we practice this coordination in medicine, like we do in cardiopulmonary resuscitations? We have a well-recognized protocols, right? But still, we feel it's not enough. So we need to identify our deficiencies and try to coordinate activities in a more organized manner and try to improve the outcome of the patient. And I'm not going to discuss that much about the leadership. Leadership is actually everything that I have already discussed. So sometimes the leader also may not have everything. That is okay as far as the whole team is aware about these non-technical skills. So leader should be a role model actually, should have all non-technical skills to guide the team ideally. Supporting and encouraging, conflict resolution, coordination, communication. And he should use the authority, and assertiveness should be there. And his responsibility to maintain the standards planning and prioritizing. Managing workload and resources also is a part of his responsibility. So I'm not going to discuss these things in detail, but you need to identify the stress and fatigue also, because it's in yourself as well as your team members, because that can definitely affect the outcome of the patient. If you're really fatigued or exhausted, then your cognitive functions and your physical performance also can get affected. So therefore, finally, the patient outcome can get affected. Right, I think you all must have heard about this Hudson River plane crash. So I would like to play a video for that also. So that's the actually end of my presentation. So I would like to make it more happy at the end.
U.S. Airways Flight 1549 has just taken off for Charlotte, North Carolina, with 155 people on board. As the jet climbs through 2,800 feet, disaster strikes.
Cactus 1539, the birds to back towards LaGuardia.
A flock of Canada geese that thrive around the Hudson River in New York City completely disabled both engines. With few alternatives, the captain of the plane, Chesley Sullenberger, makes a drastic decision.
Cactus 1529, could you get it, please? You want to try to land 1813?
Sure, what we made the numbers.
Cactus 1529, turn right 280 to land runway 18 Peterborough.
We can't do it.
Okay, which runway would you like at Peterborough?
We're going to be done.
I'm sorry, say again, Cactus?
Air traffic controller Patrick Harton has never received a call like it.
Up to this point in my career, I had never heard of a commercial airline successfully pulling off a water landing. My mind didn't really want to comprehend the words that he was saying. That's why I said, say again. I asked him to repeat himself.
2718. I think he said he's going to the Hudson.
For Captain Chesley Sullenberger, it's the biggest challenge of his life.
We were descending much more rapidly than for a normal landing because we didn't have engine thrust to make it a more gradual, flatter approach. The final critical maneuver was to choose the height at which I would begin raising the nose to trade some of our forward speed for a reduced rate of descent and to achieve the proper nose-up attitude for touchdown.
If Captain Sullenberger can't keep the nose of the aircraft out of the water until the last second, the chances of survival are slim. He must also keep the wings perfectly level on impact. If one clips the water first, the plane will cartwheel down the river, breaking up along the way.
We were descending at the rate, if you were in a hotel elevator, 2 floors per second. I knew it would be a hard landing, I just didn't know how hard. I said, this is the captain, brace for impact.
Just 208 seconds after birds caused both engines to lose thrust, Flight 1549 crash lands on the Hudson River.
It was the most intense crisis of my life. Although I've got to say that once we had landed, the sun low in the southwest was illuminating in stark relief the skyline of Manhattan immediately before us. And it was a brilliant image. That was the first moment of any kind of reflection at all, is that we had landed successfully and Manhattan was just right there, close enough almost to touch.
So all 153 passengers survived in that incident. So that is a very good example of using good non-technical skills and human factors to save lives of these 153 people. So finally he said that That fact that we landed a commercial airliner carrying 155 people on the Hudson River with no engines and no fatalities was not a miracle. However, it was a result of teamwork, skill, in-depth knowledge, and the human judgment that comes from experience, he says. So to this day, I know of no technology, even on the horizon, that could have done what that we did. Right, so that's the end of my presentation. If you have any questions, you can discuss. You have 5 minutes. Thank you very much. In summary, the human factors and lack of non-technical skills are recognized as major contributing factors in critical events. Good situational awareness is necessary to make correct diagnosis and plan management without delay. Teamwork with properly assigned team lead is an essential component of effective patient care. Conflicts affect patient outcome. Effective communication and tackling barriers to communications are one of the most important NTS which needs to be practiced. Coordinating activities expedite the care. Thank you very much.